motion to adopt the amended agenda.
And I make a motion to adopt the amended agenda with the addition of a new business of a very brief thing called wellness seminar. I'm just gonna call it wellness seminar. What I want to tell you guys about.
Did you do it under speakers and communication?
Or under,
Under other?
actually I can do it under mayor, council, manager.
Okay.
Here we go.
Where do you want to put it?
Under mayor, council, manager updates.
Okay. Okay. So noted. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's made in second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion's made in second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll go into guest speakers, communication, informational items. Nothing there. Okay. We'll move down to old business. Town manager recruitment. Work on getting that advertised out again with more advertisement. Lodging tax. We discussed that in the work session, and we're gonna have another meeting in 2 weeks. Now we move on down to Lake County Roundup reimbursement request funds, as well as Juniper RV, Julia's, LCP Alger Theater Project is requesting funds. LCP is requesting funds, lodging tax to assist in supporting executive director position. Fremont Highlanders Club is requesting funds for the visitor's guide ad. Any discussion?
I would make them, I think those are all things that need to be tabled until we complete our lodging tax guidelines, which we made good headway on today. I would suggest we table those in lieu of making any
Which one?
C through H.
The reimbursements for lodging tax.
What are we tabling them for?
Because we have our, I mean, we can vote on them, but we don't have guidelines in place.
But you've already funded.
But this was brought
Main
in
Street.
before we even discussed guidelines, and we've already given it out
That's fine,
before.
we can vote on them, that's fine.
Except for.
But the only one I have questions about is the lodging tax to assist supporting an executive director position.
Yeah, we gotta do some more research on that.
That one I want to do more, that's the only one that I have a problem with. Because I still don't think that Anna, after talking with the gal from League of Oregon Cities,
Okay, so we
she
have
wasn't
the,
sure either.
we have the email from LOC. I'm assuming that's who this is from, it doesn't say L, it just says OregonCities.org.
It's from Wendy's.
Yes,
from Wendy's.
okay,
That's
LOC.
not
I mean, there is guidelines that you can include that, but there's stipulations with that.
Right, we need to do a little more
Yeah.
fact finding on that before that's approved.
It would be similar to what we discussed about like a contract.
So C through H, with the exception of G, those are all $1,000 reimbursements, is that correct?
No, each 1,000.
I don't see a problem with approving those, but G needs a little bit more attention before we approve those, or approve that.
Okay, let a motion.
You can make the motion if you want. I do appreciate what Nikki says, and that we've talked about just in the last work session that we should have some guidelines, and I think it's only fair that we establish guidelines. I was on the record of last meeting saying that, we were a little, proactive, and that's how I said it when I made the motion a couple months, feels like it's been a couple months back now, for Occupy East Street and event. And these being, some nonprofits, some individual business owners, I think the guidelines that we were talking about in like Newberg's example talked about, and that's why I said I liked Newberg's example, because, if you can't say that you are a, nonprofit, or you are a, government entity, or some of these, criteria, then you may not fall into what we will decide to fund. And I personally think if we were to, approve all these without setting up guidelines first, we're gonna open the door for everybody to come in here and want everything funded. And a lot of these are private individual businesses who, are not in the same publication, who may come with other various requests. It just, to me, opens a door that we do not want to swing wide open because we have limited funds. And all these people, signed up for an advertisement without the understanding of that Lakeview is going to pay for their advertisement. However, I do think there may be a few on this list that we could very well fund if we decide to. So.
Would it be correct, I guess, or allowable to say that I would like to make a motion that, because I know they're probably wanting answers, I would imagine. I would like to dismiss them without prejudice type thing, where they can come back once the guidelines are established and fill out the application and follow the process. I mean, I'm not sure if we deny them, if that even, I don't want to deny them and then they weren't eligible to bring it up again type thing. Request them again.
But this was done before we even talked about discussion guidelines. Okay, we already gave the money to Occupy East Street.
Yes, and we do have to
Okay.
describe.
Those at the same meeting
People came just right after that.
They submitted all their letters as they were told by Roberta to do.
Now, so now you're gonna tell them that after they've already submitted, that they've got to resubmit?
Well, to me, the big difference is these are not tourism events or facilities.
And just because they submit a letter does not say we're gonna grant anything.
Yes, there's
Just
going to be
that
no's.
now brings it to a discussion, and we don't have the guidelines yet fully in place that talk about what the, funding, which kind of projects we're just gonna be. So, we can table this or we can vote, and I'll tell you right now, if I'm gonna vote, there's some that are gonna get a no from it, and that's fine, that's our responsibility. But like Nikki's saying, it doesn't mean that later down the road, we don't say, hey, we still have funds, and, we didn't honor that request then, but now, the year's up and we still got funds left, let's go back and honor that request. Because we don't want this pot to grow that's necessarily never gonna get spent either, so.
Right, we need to spend the money, but I see what you're saying too, Darwin. We've got to, just for the sake of audits and everything else, we've got to have our accounting and our policy set. So basically, we're not saying no at this point, but we have to get our,
There's nothing that says we have to pass this or approve these or not approve them prior
Right.
to or after.
Here's where
we
I'm
need to
at.
get our guidelines set.
Here's where I'm at. I mean, funding private businesses, I think that opens the door entirely way too far. Because we got how many restaurants in town? We want to give everyone $1,000 each? I mean, why would now not any other restaurant come and say, hey, look, I'm going to advertise in such and such. I've never advertised before, but I'm going to advertise it now for $1,000.
In a Scores-related magazine.
And yeah, it could be.
Can I just say, since I'm the one that recruited all of these businesses to be in this publication, I sit on the executive committee of Travel Southern Oregon. It was a marketing plan. It was not whoever can do it, can do it. I chose them for a reason. I chose Roundup and Ski Hill and Julia's and Occupy East Street and Tour de Outback and us and Junipers for an entire blanket advertisement that shows that Lakeview has a restaurant, they have a place to stop and eat, they have lodging, we have events, we have something that may pique an interest of a vast market of tourists. So 90,000 copies of this went out all over Oregon in every single visitor center, hotel, everywhere. So when I chose this whole, I needed to hit all those so that the person driving through on their way to Bend and that's hungry will see that Lakeview has restaurants. We get calls all the time. Do you have a gas station? Do you have a restaurant? They just do not know. Why would they know? We're not Portland.
Yeah.
We have to tell them. We have to tell them, and so I included a restaurant that went along with the others that I was advertising. So they all paid their $1,000, but we still needed to let the public, the tourists, the visitors, the potential visitors, the drive-throughers, all of them know that we have lodging and we have food. So those are the, two of the three things that tourists look for when they come through there. We have to hit those markets. So it's not that it's all of them coming in to pay. I mean, all of the restaurants, we don't want all of the restaurants in those publications. We want one.
So where's the discretion of who gets to say Paul Town or Jerry's or?
The discretion fell with me and who could afford to pay it. And they all paid it out of their funds. Lakeview, Lake County Roundup and Ski Hill brings in way more hotel stays than Occupy East Street. It's a simple
But did you tell
math.
them, see, this is my thought process, as a, let's say you went to, so you got Juniper's on here, base camp or hunters. Did you say, here's this $1,000 with the anticipation, would their mind have changed with the anticipation of they could have been reimbursed? And it would have been more affordable for them?
I only get so many spots. We only get 2
Understandable.
pages.
Yeah. We just
So
have to
it's
make
not a
sure there's
Lakeview
fairness.
guide. It's a Southern Oregon regional guide. So we don't get to put in a directory of Lakeview. That's not.
And that, I think for myself, my concern is the fairness and the equal opportunity to the other businesses.
The equal, it doesn't fall that way, unfortunately. It's a tourism-based business that we want to highlight for
Well,
these
that's what I'm saying.
specific
I
I agree.
publications.
I just think it's gonna open the door.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion, and
Okay.
I will vote accordingly. But we got a couple other people with comments, so.
It's after the fact that the money was spent instead of coming.
That you
to-
reimburse Occupy East Street.
Yeah.
It was after
I-
the
I-
fact.
That was outside of
I
that.
said after.
That was outside of process.
Personally.
He didn't even have to send
And
a letter.
I regret doing it now because
Yeah.
supposedly now we're opening the door wide open, but that was still an event. I still would have
We still have
voted
the
to.
right.
But the one,
Hold on. The bottom line now is, we've got to get our guidelines set. And at that point, that's when the decision will be made. We're
I
not
mean,
telling
we can
anybody
vote
yes
on
or
it.
no at this point,
We can
But-
vote.
we need to get our guidelines set.
So you had a work session today at 4 o'clock. What guidelines did you establish?
We've got some preliminary guidelines, and I'm gonna create a draft. City of Newburgh is one that we had 5 different examples that I supplied the council with. And City of Newburgh, we had quite a bit. There's a big copy over there. We can copy the entire packet if Dawn can take your name and get you an entire copy if you would like. But we're basically all taking bits and pieces of some of them. Some we really liked, some we didn't. Those guidelines established what was allowed and what was disallowed. And then we'll come back 2 weeks from now with another draft of those guidelines and go through it again and see if there's some changes in that.
May I address the council, please, just with a couple of concerns? I attended this meeting several months ago for some rack cards, and you graciously supported those. At that time, you did not have any guidelines. At that time, you were going to build guidelines. And that's been 2 months ago or more. So I'm hearing we still don't have guidelines. And I'm all right with that. I understand sometimes process takes a while, so I understand. I also understand that we could reapply, and this isn't definitely a no. But my other question is, statutorily, do you have a set period of time in which money, tourism or the lodging tax money has to be spent?
No,
No, it can go on and on and on.
to some discretion, very minimally.
Pardon
It's a
me?
very, very minimal discretion. If you have 4 or 5 years accumulated, you can certainly be subject to at that point. I mean, they don't give us a real clear cut, but there's no saying you can't go 6 years without spending it. If your guidelines are, or the town decides that those are being saved up for a big project.
Okay, so I assume there are funds in a fund. I'm assuming
Yes.
you have some funds. So we're not asking you for money that you don't have.
As far as we know, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're still
Okay.
under audit, yeah.
Okay, so then my other question is, and I guess it's just a statement, is that, and I'm all about policy, I'm all about guidelines, I'm all about understanding exactly what we have to do to make this application, but I also would have to speak on behalf of Lake County Roundup and the fact that we fill every motel in town, we fill every lodging place there is. We bring more people to town probably than any event. And so I have a very difficult time personally understanding why that is not tourism.
We've
No one
actually
said that yet.
discussed,
No one
No,
said
and you didn't. I-
Yeah,
we
no,
actually
we can
discussed
vote.
in our meeting earlier about giving percentages to organizations out of our 70%. The Roundup was involved in that discussion. That's where we all are going
Yeah.
to go home for the
Okay.
next week or two and decide, do we want to make an allocation to certain organizations and set aside?
Well,
So, yeah, we've discussed
I guess
that.
just a little bit of advice, don't be subjective with that. If you're going to build your guidelines, be very definitive about who gets what
Yeah.
and anyway.
Yeah, no,
I
we
appreciate
did
that.
discuss that because we brought up the issue that the county, you guys get a percentage, Cambridge gets a percentage, so would it be something that for us would be, one, easier to just give a percentage instead of having the numerous
And
requests?
go through the process every year for
Yeah.
you guys.
And just, so, yeah.
Because you are the biggest event in town.
We
There's
do
doubt
not
about that.
disagree that the Roundup is a huge tourism event.
I have a process comment. You have guidelines. You already have set guidelines because you have already spent money from this fund. You've made
There's state
allocations.
guidelines,
You
yeah.
have, right? So there are guidelines because those guidelines, I mean, you gave money to Occupy East Street, you gave money for reimbursement of brochure costs. So there are guidelines that determined that those were actions of the board. And I guess what you're saying now, and just correct me if I'm wrong, is that some of the requests that are now before you do not match those guidelines. Am I getting that right or wrong?
I think there's speaking for myself, a little bit of a gray area with some of them. The biggest thing is 2 months ago, roughly, like Judy mentioned, that we disbanded longer than that, I think, we disbanded the committee, and we knew that we needed to come up with a process and guidelines, not only for our sake, for paper trail, but accounting, things like that. We've honestly been in crisis mode almost for other issues, and it has been put to the side. And to me, that's been unfortunately, something we've been dealing with for several months. I think that we've all been pretty darn productive on trying to get stuff done, even with all the other things that we need to get done faster. So what we want to do as a town council is make it a lot simpler process for everybody by having those guidelines.
But there is a risk,
There's
right? There's a risk of delay. First of all, at the last 2 meetings that I've attended, your town council has been sitting here saying, all of these qualify. So you have the advice of council, and you have already granted allocations from this fund, and now you're pulling back for some reason. Isn't there a risk that people will feel you're being selective without a logical or rational basis?
Well, I can't control their feelings on it. I would make a fair assessment that there's always going to be criticism of everything we do.
But they're not criticizing your decision, they're criticizing your process.
We're pulling back because we need to make sure there's proper accounting for this fund.
You've had this money, you've been collecting this money for over a year. You
I
haven't had
haven't
council.
been there for over a
With
year.
respect to the 2 new councilmen and women, you have been collecting this for over a year. You started collecting it April and May of 2018. We have brought in Travel Oregon to advise you, Travel Southern Oregon to advise you, and still nothing has happened. And so now that you've opened up and started funding things and said, in the past, to just give a letter to the committee didn't work out, give a letter to Roberta, and so they did, and now you're here with these requests, you're like, whoa, hold on. This isn't, I mean, so it's coming across like, actually, wait a minute, never mind, that didn't work, let's try
I would say
this.
that I
That-
felt
so-
like with a town manager and their advisement, we jumped the gun on giving out funds.
But that's not everyone else's fault that has applied.
No, but unfortunately, the consequence to that is that we need to set up the guidelines.
Okay.
Can you give us an idea when that could be?
We're supposed to meet here,
In 2
we're
weeks.
planning in about 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Is the plan. Our next town council meeting is not for 3 weeks. We would like to be a little bit sooner than that.
So so are you saying you would like to have those guidelines built by then?
We'll have a draft.
Well, but that isn't final.
No,
That's a
because we do
draft.
have to have Headland involved, unfortunately,
Sure.
he's not here today. Plus, we couldn't type up a draft today. I mean, I would, no problem doing it sooner, but we all have quite a bit of other things to deal with as well. And it is gonna take some time, plus Headland does need to review it.
So could you do us the courtesy, those of us who have made application, of notifying us? I know in my letter, I respectfully asked that if you turn us down, or that you would let us know and let us know why. Can you let us know when we can reapply and what we have to do to reapply?
That's why I suggested tabling it until after we come up with our guidelines, which, yes, then we would certainly notify you, send out applications, that type of thing.
And that is part of the guidelines that we're looking at, is whether you're denied or accepted, you will receive a letter. And if you're denied, you will receive a letter why you're denied.
But it sounds like we have to resubmit before whether we know whether we have been approved or not approved. We have to resubmit. Is that correct?
It would be what we're looking at is a form, the process, a form with guidelines, answers to questions such as, how are you benefiting tourism? I mean, we've got some ideas.
We can't really go into it very
Yeah, it's a
deeply
draft.
because we haven't came up with the exact guidelines that we're going to use.
Hi, I am just going to say something on behalf of Julia's at 395. I know that you're thinking, well, if we let one restaurant, because it's a business, then we let all the other restaurants in, but we were dining at Julia's at 395, and there was another couple eating there, and before they left, they came over to us and said, we're from Sedona, Arizona, and we cannot believe that you have such a wonderful restaurant. You are so lucky to live in Lakeview, to have this restaurant. And that's the kind of tourism that I think we're looking for, and that's why, correct me if I'm wrong, that you included Julia's in your Southern Travel Oregon brochure.
Culinary tourism, sports tourism, lodging, all of it works together. I feel with you guys making these decisions that it's very discouraging for the community and the large amount of volunteers that you have working for you to create tourism, because I haven't seen the town of Lakeview do anything specific that the townspeople are doing to get tourism out. You have people working for you to bring money into the town to then give you more hotel tax funds. And it's such a dragging of it and pleading and begging and meeting to give them $1,000 that they spent out of their ski hill, had $3,000 left, and they spent $1,000 because they know how important it is to get the ski hill out in a publication like that. This money is, you have people working for you to do this job, and it's extremely hard to support them when things are constantly tabled. I know there's been 2 new council people, but this has been going on for over a year, where there's been no movement on process, no movement on transparency, no movement on encouraging your residents and the residents that live outside of town limits, like most of Roundup volunteers do, that are working to fill your hotels every year. It's very discouraging for the people that are working for you. They're working for you. And yet we have to beg, plead, and watch you give out money to someone who didn't even apply for it.
They did.
Let me ask you guys a question. If you were doing a process, if there was a process that the chamber was doing or the renter was doing, and you realize, hey, this process is not working correctly, it is not fair to everybody involved, would you not drag your feet until you corrected that process?
We have had that happen at the chamber. We've had that happen with dues. We've created a monster in copies and lost a bunch of money and had to finish out the year the way we started it and eat that money. We gave tons and tons and tons of copies that we couldn't afford, turns out, in the end, by the membership price that they paid. And we had to honor the way we started it until the very end of it. We
It's
changed
different.
it. We changed it at the time that we could change it. We weren't going to change it in the middle, which is what you're doing.
No, we're not. This is not a membership process.
Well, I'm just
This
giving
is
you
a
an example
process-
of what that was.
This is kind of like a grant process. And we feel, as a council, that in order for us to track this money properly, the way the state wants us to track it, we've got to change the process. And so we have stopped everything until the process is changed. We're not denying anybody anything at this point, but we're not granting anything until we get this done right, because as you know, if it's not done properly and we're audited, we'll lose this tax and then everybody loses. And that's what we're trying to keep from happening. Because we've had some changes in the upper management here. I know myself and Nikki, that's been new here, has asked for the guidelines, because there's supposed to be guidelines.
There is guidelines.
We've
No, there
never
was
received
ones
them.
for our town.
For the
that
town of
was
Lakeview, there were supposed to be guidelines, and they've been asked for several times. And I know I've never received them, I know Nikki's never received them. So at this point, we need to create those guidelines so it's fair to everybody involved. We cannot continue doing what we've been doing, or we're gonna lose lodging tax money, and you know that as well as I do.
Yeah, I will be the first one.
So that's where we're at.
Which has to be done by the
Scott, may I ask
association
you a
that has
question?
rights to those
Certainly.
funds.
Is the lodging tax money exclusively for tourism?
The 70% is.
70% is, the 30% goes in
Okay.
general fund.
So what is the definition of the council's for?
Well, that's what we're trying to get from the
For
state.
tourism, what is tourism to you guys?
I mean, tourism is an event that brings people here to stay.
That's one definition.
One definition, exactly. Apparently,
We can adopt what we want out of this big description of tourism. I think we all know the vagueness of
It's
tourism.
an ORS, Judy, that's number 320.300
And we can specify.
to 320.350. And it defines those things for us.
So there are definitions of
There
what
are
tourism
Oh, yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
in the
The
state
state
law.
says like that.
And so, and I agree with what the audience is saying, because I think we're, changing horses in midstream, so to speak. And, but I don't think the rest of the council agrees with me on that right now.
So I have a question, was the money that was already granted from the 30% that's unrestricted, or from the 70% that's tourism?
The 70.
It was from the 70. Is there enough money in the 30%, which is apparently not at risk of being, restricted? Is there enough money to address the issues before the council today from the 30%?
There's
And
not
then-
a financial issue, because the 30% we still have to even decide.
no, the 30's
It's been
built
in the general
It's
fund.
spent.
It's built into our budget, goes
It's
into.
not a
It
financial
goes in the
Only
general
talking
fund.
amount issue.
So it's been spent, the 30% has been spent?
Oh, yeah, we.
Okay,
It's
so it's,
allocated, right?
Allocated.
So the tourism money is a special fund, so to speak.
Yeah, it's its
Specific.
fund in itself, and
These
that's the
guidelines
70% of the lodging tax, correct.
Okay, well, I respect your comments, and I will look forward to hearing from you from the standpoint of Roundup, and I'm sure everybody else will too. And I will say once again, I can't imagine that Roundup is not a tourism qualified event. Brings
Oh,
people to
yeah.
town.
I don't
Well,
there's no,
I don't think
there's more than not a disagreement on any of us.
Okay, but
We're just trying to figure
That's why I think we
out.
should vote, like truly. I think we should just vote.
Make a motion then.
Ginger?
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I would just like clarification. I believe it was your last council meeting, your your city town council person, Jeff Headland, was here. And on several times during that meeting, he assured you all that all of the applications that you had received, or all of the letters that you had received requesting money were within the guidelines of what the state has. So I am wondering, my question for you is then, it's not about whether or not these are appropriate according to the guidelines or the law or whatever from the state, but it's more about the fact that you are going to, you want to now develop a process that is different than the process that was in place at the time you received the letters.
There wasn't a process
And that-
outside of the state level. We have a right as a council to put a process for the council level or the town level.
Right, and your process at the time that you received those letters was to write a letter. That was what all of these groups were, or individuals, or businesses, or LCP, or whoever, that was what we were told to do. That was the process at that time. I just wanted clarification from you folks if that's the case.
I would take it under the understanding that that's been the process since they started collecting revenue prior to.
Then let's vote on these four.
Then that would,
on the
I mean, that,
process.
we can certainly vote on it, but I think that was with guidance of management at the time, not necessarily, with the fact that there was a committee that was trying to work on being, create these. So, I think if they had a process, it was an unwritten process for sure,
Yeah, because it's never been given to me and I've asked several times.
that we
for it.
know of, yeah. And there's even supposedly a form, but we've never been given that.
Mhm. Make a motion.
So I'm still gonna go back to saying, when we, during our work session, talked about possible policy criteria, I pointed out how I really like eligible applicants, okay? And, it has to do with, nonprofits, 501c3s, other government entities, and again, related to tourism. Obviously, we're trying to get people in hotels to build this tax to then, to be able to fund other projects, right? And to me, I have a very hard time with funding businesses for the sole fact that people, private businesses could continue to come in here and say, I'm gonna start advertising, everywhere out of your community, because it may bring people into your community, but, and that may be vetted out, and we might find out that, hey, if they do start advertising, Klamath's paper and other Bend or wherever, it might bring more people to town. And if there's some way to judge that and show statistics, numbers, if that's what's happening, and maybe it's as simple as at the restaurant, the ask cards of how, how'd you find out about us or whatever, and it says, it was this box, and it says, little flyer we support that says, yeah, found out about through, advertising, which was effectiveness. So I have, I will probably stick to that for a while until we find a different way to, show that each of these businesses have the same opportunity. It comes with some of the guidelines that we're talking about on a quarterly basis, a certain amount of requests are going to come in, it's a written application that then, shows how this is going to support tourism. I really find it interesting that we have got this fund that, yes, may have been set up for a year. We've been asking for specifics. Legal counsel has given us some guidelines and verbally, nothing in writing that we've adopted. And, we've been under, like you said, a type of crisis mode for the last couple of months, and yet these requests come in as simply a letter, which, again, 3 months ago, we had a form, and that was 3 months ago, and these came within the last month. So I mean, again, there's a whole lot of things that's why I think tabling this isn't a bad idea. However, if we were to vote on any of these, it's not slamming the door on any of these, and definitely not in any way saying we don't support these things. I just think that this money, when we talk about some of the major projects that could be funded, and if we, had hypothetically everybody come in and say, hey, I want you to pay for my advertising for my business, I think that's a total waste of our money in actual supporting good tourism. I mean, all these businesses are going to exist, because of the way they market, and if we're not fair to each and give them all the opportunity, I mean, we may come in and get flooded to me with, I don't know why any business owner wouldn't look at our minutes, look at the decisions we made, and go, wow, if they're giving out free money, we're going to say, this is, I need a piece, and everybody's, and then this money's gone, and then we get caught up in, personally, it feels like getting attacked
Of course.
of not spending this money or not, being fair to everybody when we may end up in a situation where we don't have any money left, and then we can't fund any of the projects we really want if we don't set up the true criteria. So, again, I'm ready to vote, but at the same time, it's like, we've talked about wanting to set up a process. I think it's appropriate that we set up a process. People can wait. These monies were spent without the understanding that we were gonna pay it. So that's done and gone. Roundup is still gonna happen. That is a tourism event. It should get funding. I think it will on a vote at some point. But, and some of these other things, like the ski kills, I don't know what their expenses are until about November, but probably not a lot. I'm sure they're gonna, but I think we could go down this list and look at which ones of these are nonprofits and things like that.
That ski club, of course, I think, well, what about, Little League
Yeah,
and things like that?
and there's a lot of, to me, no-brainers like on this list, but there's some that we need to vet out. And so, I'm, whatever you want. If someone wants to make a motion.
The ones that, it's asking here is.
What's the frustration? I really am missing that part, because we haven't even decided, and you guys are acting like we made a note.
Like, this is
Like-
gonna start
like
with death until.
We sit up here and we
Frustration.
feel like we're getting attacked.
We don't
Oh,
want to make you feel.
hold it. Stop.
Great.
It's like everybody's wanting to fight back and forth.
No, we're just asking.
That's not
We
what
were
we're
just
here
gonna answer a
for.
question. I was just gonna answer a question.
Yeah, she
Well,
wasn't yelling.
I was gonna make a comment that the people that is asking for this money is advertised in this brochure, and there's only so many that can advertise in there. Not
We heard all
everybody
that.
around town can advertise in that.
We heard all
We
that,
heard-
right?
yeah, we all
That's not
understand
what
that.
I'm asking. Like, we haven't even decided, it's like we've said no already. And yet, we still have the opportunity to set up guidelines so that we can, everybody can say, yes, we're following a process. We're not just
So
jumping the gun and trying to be proactive to be helpful for an event.
The question
like
is,
I did
what's the
before, now
rush?
getting
I would
canned
answer
for or
that.
something.
I think that's really what it is, what's the rush?
So I think it's not a rush per se, it's what I feel and a lot of, the people that we're involved with feel is that when you hand out one and you ignore all the rest, even though they all offer the same, restaurant tourism is a huge part of tourism. It's an enormous
Nobody's debating
part.
that. I mean, we all
But it's
agree.
not a nonprofit. So my frustration is I don't fully feel that you guys have an understanding of tourism and how it works. I don't fully feel that you do. I mean, I just don't. I don't feel fully supported by you. You have an entity in Lakeview that's working extremely hard, that's involved so many other groups that bring in tourism, that's worked hard with all of those groups to help promote them, and all we get in return is this. It's like,
So we
well,
haven't done
This, we
anything for
haven't made a
you. We haven't done
decision yet.
anything.
What do you-
well, it's
So what
just
is
table
this?
and
Yeah.
beg,
What we
tabling
do is
and
we approve,
begging
like,
for help
Several
and.
things.
You don't
for
realize we have
guys.
had budget issues? Like, we've told you why we tabled this. We don't have a manager
We've had
in
this for a
place.
year.
No,
No,
we
we
have
have
not had
not.
these requests for a year, and we've
You've
granted every
had that
request.
hotel tax fund for a year. We've offered help, we've offered guidance, we've offered everything. And you guys blow it off like it doesn't mean anything and that you're gonna pick what
Let's
you
vote
wanna
on
pick.
Like, I don't know where you're coming up with that.
And then
Like,
we get
we've
personally
approved
attacked.
everything until this list. Everything, without question. What are you talking about? Like,
Without thank
We
you
we
on,
denied
without,
everything that you brought to this council, Jessica.
without
We have
thank
never-
we
you
denied one
publicly.
No,
we're
but
having-
it's not,
that
that's
isn't
not
an
what,
attack.
One at a time, talk. Bonnie?
So, I guess just sitting here listening to this whole conversation, I guess I would, as a resident of the town, I would think you shouldn't approve anything until you have your policies in place, just because of this conversation.
Yep,
Just my point.
because I feel like if we say yes,
Yeah.
then
I
you're
think
happy
we-
with this. If we say no, then it will be coming back to us again and saying we're not doing something else.
Right, you did it under this rules, why can't you do it under these rules?
And I'm
again?
sorry, but no's gonna happen. We got,
I'm not opposed to you guys saying no.
but
That's
every time
ridiculous.
we've said no, we've been personally attacked.
How?
This is, we apparently don't know what under tourism is.
I just
I
feel
mean,
like you don't
reason-
have,
Let's focus
you
on
feel like
tourism,
Little
but I
League is
don't-
tourism.
I think we have a great
Well,
idea of
actually,
what
Little League
tourism
does
is.
make a lot of money.
I think we have a great idea of
but
what
you're not
tourism
now.
is.
And, you know, I've driven across this country several times and, you know, some towns are great, some aren't. But, you know, this is a great town to come to, I think.
Absolutely.
But we, you know, this argument is not getting us anywhere except going back and forth. So if, you know,
That's true.
we just need, and your requests have been after the fact, you know, I mean, you've known for a year that we had money in there too, but it was, your request was made after you spent the money. And so that's a part of the issue also, plus the nonprofit organizations is, you know, that was what crossed my mind, and I missed the last 2 meetings, but anyway, I understand that our attorney told us that that was permissible. But, you know, to wait a couple weeks, I don't think this arguing is gonna get us anywhere. And apparently the council feels that that's what we should do, and so.
There's a lot of changes going on in Lakeview, a lot of changes. And hopefully they're gonna be for the better. There's been a lot of things that I've seen. I've only been in this town for 3 years. I've been coming up here since I was 12 years old. And there's a lot of things that have been done right, there's a lot of things that have been done wrong. And we're trying to correct some of the things that are being done wrong. And if we just continue going down, we've made mistakes. We're not denying that. We've made mistakes as a council, and we're gonna make mistakes. But if we continue to make a mistake, and continue to make that mistake over and over and over again, then it turns into an issue. It turns into some of the issues that this town has had for years and years. So at this point, we need to try to correct the mistake that was made prior, which was handing out money without the council or the town having their proper guidelines in place, and move forward with that. We're not telling anybody no. We're not here to argue with you guys or deny you guys anything. But if we continue to go down the road that this town's going down and continue to make mistakes over and over again, this is how it's gonna turn out every council meeting. We're just gonna sit here and fight and not accomplish anything. We're not denying anybody anything. We're not telling you no. We're not telling you we're not dispersing the money. We need to get guidelines set so it is fair for everybody across the board. And that's the bottom line.
And that's fair. So can you tell us when you'll have those set?
We're hoping to have them set within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Well, we're hoping to
We'll have a
have,
draft, we're hoping to have a draft at our
we'll have
next
a
meeting.
draft, and then we would need to run it by our attorney also to make sure that things are accurate. And, you know, hopefully, I think our first meeting in August.
Is a week after that.
Right.
And hopefully
so
we can vote on it at that point.
hopefully we will have, you know, what we need to do in place.
And I would hope that we have the support of the public for having a process that is clear and definitive and fair to the public and all businesses in this community.
And that's the direction we're headed. We don't want to sit here and pick, okay, we're going to do this one, but not this one, this one. Where's our guidelines that says that we can't do this one, we're not going to do this one? There are state guidelines, they're pretty vague and pretty gray, what we can do. But we have to set town guidelines of where and how this money is going to be distributed. And that's what we're trying to do. And yes, Jessica, we've had it for a year. I haven't been here for a year. I haven't been on this council for
I
a year.
understand that, and I said with respect to the both of you, that I knew that you I know
So
that you
at
haven't been
this
here.
point,
There was a failed attempt, and they made an attempt. I would say a fair attempt.
we have a good council now that works together. And they've had in the past councils that works together. It just was never completed. So at this point, we've taken this on, we're gonna complete it, we're gonna move forward with it. And that's where we're at with it.
I hope you do.
We will.
That's why I fought for us getting this done sooner than later, because I felt like we owed it to the community, which I think we do.
So what do you want to do?
I suggest we table it, but if somebody else has a suggestion, it's fine. What do you think, Darwin?
Well, I'm pretty certain where I'll stand when we adopt the guidelines. And with what I talked about in the previous work session the other day, I would easily go vote on this, but I think that it's important that we set up a clear pattern to follow, and whether that's been unwritten and it's a pattern that we can follow, we don't even have the minutes to look back at in front of us right now, so again, It's money spent, like, we're gonna get there.
And well, our next meeting will be August 13th, so we should know.
We are hoping to have a meeting before that because that's 3 weeks away.
Mm.
That's what we said earlier in our.
Okay, so that's the regular town council meeting.
Yeah, we will definitely have it on there for some type of discussion, but we're hoping to have one sooner.
But I just thought maybe if we reiterated August 13th was our
So,
regular
for
council
sure.
meeting.
We want to table this until we get the guidelines in place, is that what you're saying?
Would we suggest that?
I make a motion that we table items C through H on old business until our meeting on August 13th.
Second,
Oh, I'll second that.
those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
What are you?
I'm in
I just
for it.
think
Okay.
4-1. All right, move on down to new business. Fairgrounds master plan, Ronnie.
Are you scared?
No, not at all, I think it's funny, sorry.
Not really sure you want to do this.
Yeah, I don't care. So, as you know, the fairgrounds got the first $50,000 for roughly 2/3 of its master plan.
I saw that in the paper.
Yeah, and so it's coming along super great. I'm trying to get funding for the final third, which is roughly about 20,000.
Ronnie, can I get a copy of
Oh,
that, please?
yeah.
Sorry, I just need it for my records.
You have to take my copy.
Great, thank you, Mayor.
So what it is getting the first 50,000 was super hard. It took 2 years, and really it was kind of a economic opportunity grant that kind of fell in the lap at the last minute. And so I'm trying to, it ends August 30th, and I'm trying to, if we can get funding, we can do it so that it all ends by December 31st. We can't get funding for any of the new buildings or changes or improvements or anything until the master plan is complete. So I've had funders coming out and looking at the fairgrounds with really good response. So I'm really excited as to what happens right after the plan. But still, it goes right back to getting the plan, the rest of the plan completed. So I don't care where the money comes from. Doesn't matter to me at all. And I mean, all would be great, part would be great. I am trying to go to other places too for funding, so it's wouldn't just all, I'm not asking for the whole thing, but if you want to, I'm more than happy to accept it. Really what we have to date so far is we got our first rough draft of their conceptual, which is just a rough draft of their ideas. The board hasn't even seen it yet. And it's exciting. It's just exciting. But anyway, it does, it is a tourism, fairgrounds is a tourism thing, not only for the roundup, but for all the events that we have. It brings people in, and it's a restaurant, food, fuel, lodging, et cetera, blah, 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 all that stuff. So anyway, the town has been supportive before in numerous little things, and in 4th of July, you guys are always a good supporter, so I just thought maybe you'd want to partner in on this one.
So is this 24,000 the total cost or
Well,
what you need?
So we're not going to go through SCOED on this particular portion, so it's only the 22
Okay.
is the final.
22.
And you've
Yeah,
raised 2/3 of that already?
we already have the 50,000 of it, yes.
And this
No,
is the
this
remaining?
is the
Okay.
remaining what we
Okay.
need, right,
This is what they need.
yeah,
Yeah, what you have to raise
right,
before.
to finish the plan.
Okay.
So, but that's kind of it, as you can see from what's left on this. What we have so far is the conditions, facilities conditions. You were in on that meeting too, right? We had a lot of the stakeholders in on the meetings. And facility-wise, pretty much all of them were in the poor stage, according to condition analysis. And so, they're old, it's just how it goes. So we're looking at, all the discussions have been around a multi-use indoor center, which would be an arena, so it would take place of all the stock barns, but it could also hold ropings, it could hold bull ridings, it could hold anything, which is the beauty of it.
We did that in Red Bluff.
Yeah.
At the Red Bluff Fairgrounds.
Yeah,
Indoors only.
and I really like the Crook
Yeah,
County
it was-
ones, that's the one that I've been
indoors.
walking through. I really like
If you get a chance, look at the one in Red Bluff, 'cause when they did that in Red Bluff, they changed their arena, same thing that they
Oh,
did,
yeah.
they do in here, and now they have the monster truck races there, they do,
Yeah.
like Bob, tractor pulls, everything else there.
Yeah.
And they were able to do
Same
that.
way.
prior.
Yeah, and to have something available that we could utilize year-round,
Yes.
it just adds a whole new point to it, so. Anyway, so I just wanted to give the town the opportunity to partner with us.
So your deadline's August 31st?
That's the end of the first phase plan. So it'd be nice if this continued right from there so that they could finish it all easily by the end of the year. But there's no deadline on this, 'cause I haven't procured the funds yet.
Okay,
So, anyway, thank you. I appreciate it, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Are you staying through the whole meeting,
Yeah,
Ryan? I have a couple of questions for you after the meeting.
okay.
All right. Let's move on down to resolutions 959, in the matter of setting compensation for Jeff Marshall, town manager pro tem.
Did anybody receive a copy of that resolution?
Nope.
I put it in everybody's box.
Got emailed to us too.
I'll just go make more copies.
Yeah, 'cause I don't have it, I didn't get it.
Got emailed on
Monday.
No, I emailed this all to everybody,
Monday.
yeah, Monday, because that's when you didn't have
They
it.
went up both resolutions.
Got it.
I remember seeing them.
I felt on the desk.
I understand.
That's a consensus. So it's under the regular. It might be faster. That's not even on my-
I think I did too, because I don't have any of the resolutions or anything.
Yeah, it was on the original one that you.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I
why.
think I left that one at home.
Well, I never got that one, so I never picked my stuff up till this morning. I just got it now, so.
Yeah. Saw it in the email. Yeah, I told her, she said she would.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, here, there it is. See it?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think we're gonna get it all down. Let's make it down to another place. Since Edwin's not here. We need him here. I think Edwin's not here. We're not gonna have him.
Oh. That's fine.
It was yesterday's agenda, they would take the English people to that.
All right.
All right.
And I think you guys do it all the way.
Not 959, whereas the Lakeview Town Council determined resolution 957 is needed to set compensation for Jeff Marshall for his work as town manager pro tem. Now therefore it be resolved pursuant to resolution 958, town council hereby sets compensation for Jeff Marshall as a consideration for the additional duties of town manager pro tem he is performing in the amount of $1,000 per month as a stipend retroactive stipend, I should say, retroactive to his appointment as town manager pro tem. Do I have a motion on this?
I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 959.
Second.
Motion made in second, those in favor?
Wow,
Aye.
yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Aye. Ditto.
Now we'll go to resolution 960.
It's a little bit
In the matter of setting compensation, town engineer Darrell Anderson assisting town manager pro tem Jeff Marshall. Whereas the town council determined that town manager pro tem Jeff Marshall needed assistant in performing his duty as town manager pro tem. Whereas the town engineer Darrell Anderson offered to assist town manager pro tem Jeff Marshall in his duties, and the town council wishes to compensate the town engineer for the assistance he is providing to the town manager pro tem. Now therefore be it resolved, town council hereby sets compensation for the town engineer Darrell Anderson in the amount of $1,000 per month and additional to his normal monthly retainer being performed until the permanent town manager is appointed.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 960.
Second.
Motion made in second, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. All right, let's move on to mayor, council, manager updates.
That was where I wanted to do the wellness seminar. So in October, the county is participating in, what's the gentleman's name?
David Radner.
And this was not my idea, so I can't take credit for it. Darwin put a
Wellness
bug,
committee's idea.
Darwin put a bug in my ear. And this gentleman, it's a 3-hour seminar that I would love it if our council and our office staff and Jeff, I'm not quite,
Sure, what to call
your
it?
sort of office staff, right, would participate in. I'm gonna, there's a $750 grant through CIS that will help pay for it. The county is paying for it, but I would like to help offset their expense in it.
Do you have the exact date?
October 16th, 9 to 12 a.m. So I wanted to kind of,
What day is that?
October 16th, I believe it's a Tuesday. I wanted to get your guys' kind of permission to pursue that grant, and possibly, you know,
Where is this meeting?
Here.
That's on a Wednesday,
yes.
and from what time?
9 to 12, and we would probably have to do an office shutdown for those 3 hours.
We can't afford to do an office shutdown for 3 hours.
I think we could, if with enough notice, I think we could do it.
So we can discuss that a little bit
Yeah.
more when we get closer. Hopefully we'll have a town manager in place by then. Did Ann confirm that?
Melanie did,
Oh, Melanie.
yeah.
Because I didn't know that was.
Their expense on it is $4,500. It's in the basement of the courthouse. And so if we could get the $750 wellness grant, I would like to.
So somehow the county's gonna be shutting all their county
They're doing it,
offices.
yeah.
And it's just a matter of informing the public ahead of time that you're doing it, and then you can do it. I mean, it's well worth the staff time to go and actually sit through
Well,
the
we have
wellness.
2 part-time, one part-time employee that.
We have one, but then, you know, we want to leave one person there in the office by
So
themselves.
we can talk about that more later, but we
We'll
need
figure
to
it out.
offer it to, you know, and the county's looking to, they're not, the county wasn't asking us to help pay for this.
No,
Let me be
I
sure
think
on
that would be the right thing to do.
That was just, yeah,
We do probably have,
More.
because we have wellness benefits, we should be able to use the
and apply
CIS.
still for a grant, yeah, through CIS, similar to what the county has done.
Yes.
So this is, we can discuss this more later, but I'm glad you bring it up now so that
Because there's
we're-
grant deadlines,
Yeah, there are some deadlines, but the county can accommodate others, and they will reach out to other
It's up to 80.
entities as well.
Up to 80 people.
Is that what she said? And I
Just
can't remember how many
crazy.
attended
Get
the
the
first
grant.
time, it was probably easily
Pardon?
40.
If we can get the grant, county shutting down, put it in the paper,
So you guys good with me
put
pursuing that?
notices out there on the doors.
If you guys want to do some
Maybe as simple as that's what the county would do.
training together.
I don't know, I have a feeling you guys are trying to get,
We're not gonna all hug you, Ray, I promise. Maybe.
I don't know. Okay, well,
Okay, that's it.
Jeff, you have anything?
Nope, nothing to add.
Okay. The only thing I have is we got our new doors. So, and I like them. I like the way they lock and everything.
Good.
And they're good safety hatches, latches, you know. Okay,
They're very nice.
let's move on down to public comment. Citizens may address council on items on the agenda or not on the agenda. Out of respect for the council and others in the attendance, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. Do we have any public comment?
Everybody's afraid to say anything.
I don't think so. I don't think anybody is.
I think we, yeah, I don't think they're afraid, no.
Julie, my name's Stuart, I live here in Lakeview, 429 South I, and I just want to, as part of the VFW, I want to thank the participation I received from people from the council and from the town of Lakeview and supporting our endeavors of trying to get the flag routes out, and getting the flags up. I want to put out that special thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for what you guys do.
Yeah.
If you will give us a date on every time you get ready to put those out, like a calendar or something.
I think it's only twice a year, right?
What's
Two or
that?
three times a year? Two times
Seven?
a year.
But you put flags out.
That you
how many
fly the
times?
flags on the sidewalks, yeah.
7 or 8 times a year.
7 or 8.
Depending on, inclement, like if there's a foot of snow out there, we're not putting them out.
Okay.
Do any of those holes need to be cleaned out?
We do it when we, yeah.
I've already hit all up and down all the streets.
'Cause I-
George has a little tool he packs in his pocket, and Stuart has one, and they dig them out.
Well, I've got
Yeah.
a small,
Actually, I bought a special bit and everything, and I went through and I cleaned
okay,
out a bunch of the holes. Now, if there's any others that we need to be aware of, then please let me know and I can take care of those. Because there's only like a lot.
okay.
I don't know where they're all at, okay? Just work with that.
Any more public comment? Okay, hearing none, we will adjourn the session at 7:04 PM.